Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here on Thursday. We're happy to be here on Thursday. We had a wonderful time on Wednesday. I moderated the panel on marijuana at the UH Law School. It was fabulous. We opened I told you guys, we opened the program with, will everybody who has had a toke prior to this, this program, please sit down. Since they were all sitting, there was no risk. That was a really good program. They had really good speakers, hot. Anyway, so today we have, let's call this research in Manoa, except in this case, Manoa is not SOWEST, it often is. In this case, it's the EastWest Center, which is really good. And we have Sumeet Saksena and Jeff Fox. They are doing research at the EastWest Center in science, I think I would say science, although it's demographic type science, right? What are you doing?
It's geography.
Yeah.
It's people and the environment.
Yeah, okay. That's what you guys have done for years and years and years.
Well, the EastWest Center, of course, has many types of research: demography, political science, economics, and environment. We're in the environmental group.
I'd like the people to get to know who you are. So that's Jeff Fox. And he's going to tell you now how he got to be where he is in this life.
Oh, yes.
Remember, this is a 45-minute show.
Well, I've been in Hawaii 30 years. I'd been Peace Corps in Nepal 40-some years ago. I grew up in Nebraska, and that was it. I'm going to do Asia. So I got a PhD at the University of Wisconsin on development studies. My first job was teaching in a geography department in Indonesia for 2 years, and then I came here, and I've been here since, doing research on environmental issues, primarily how people use land, how that's changing, what are the environmental and social implications in Southeast and Asia and Nepal. And it's been a fascinating period to be looking at this because everything's been changing so rapidly.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to usurp our thought process after a while.
Yeah.
I heard on the radio over here that you guys probably knew this, but there's methane in the permafrost. And when the permafrost melts, the methane comes out, and that accelerates climate change.
Global warming, yeah. Exactly.
And this is really scary now.
Yeah. I just read that recently, too.
Yeah. Sumeet Saksena, I met you with Meheru Jasawala. It has to be more than a decade ago on Hawaii Public Radio.
Yeah.
We had a memorable show. I will never forget the show, or you. So it's great to see you after all this time.
Jay.
Tell us about how you got here.
I've been at the EastWest Center for 14 years, and that's exactly how long I have been in the US. Prior to that, I was working in India with one of the leading think tanks. So I have a background in actually a graduate degree in physics, but then I decided to do more applied stuff. So I have my PhD in environmental science and engineering. And since then, I was mainly researching air pollution issues in Asia. And actually, apart from Meheru's program, you once also interviewed me on something that we were doing on air pollution.
Yes, I remember.
Right, that was the second time. Yeah. So even at the center, my initial work related to air pollution risks in India, Vietnam, etc. And then sometime around 2008, Jeff and a bunch of other colleagues, they got into this business of looking at how landscape and modernization can possibly impact emerging infectious diseases. And at that time, they didn't have on their team someone with the, let's say, environmental science kind of background. So they said, why don't you, join the bus? So I said, yeah, okay, but I don't know exactly where I'll be able to contribute. So it was a learning process for me. Looked at the literature, tried to understand how an environmentalist can contribute to this project.
Yeah. And you're in the same wave of seeing changes in the climate affect the way we live, the way the whole ecology works, and to map that effectively in a global sense. It's really exciting to do that.
Right.
And of course, up to today, most of the changes we're mapping and we're observing are more driven by economic factors than by climate.
Yeah.
I mean, we are concerned about climate, and it is going to affect
all that in the
livelihood.
past was only to prepare you for now.
To prepare. Yes, I guess so. The next generation's going to have the real fun.
Oh, yeah, they are. Sorry, this is the world we're leaving you. So let's talk about chickens. You know, the first thing, I want to clarify this, you know, is it okay, these guys do bird flu incidences right now,
Right.
they study in Vietnam. So is it okay for me to have a chicken salad sandwich at lunch? I asked you before, and I'd just like you to tell everybody it's okay or not.
Yeah, I guess at this point of time, all over the world, there's no harm really in consuming meat as such, because thankfully, the nature of the disease is such that it's been affecting more poultry and less human beings. But we don't want it to reach a stage where it would start affecting human beings, and more importantly, we don't want the disease to reach a stage where human to human transmission will become easier. So the kind of work we are doing is basically research that will help nip the problem in the bud, you know, before it transfers into human beings.
Okay, so what are you doing? I mean, really, this is so interesting to me. What are you doing, and how is that going to help us nip the problem in the bud, in the bird?
Yeah, this study that we did was in Southeast Asia, which is since 2001 or 2003 been the global hotspot for bird flu. And not just for bird flu, even before that it was known that all influenza A type problems have emanated from southern China, Hong Kong, North Vietnam, and so on. So to some extent, scientists were not surprised when the bird flu problem also originated in the same part of the world.
Can you say why it's limited to that area? I mean, why don't they have it in Bulgaria?
You know, sorry.
Well, our hypothesis of why we went into this was that as societies and places go through very, very rapid economic change, and then you see this, you see it in China, you see it now in mainland Southeast Asia, the large cities. We've been working Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City. They're developing industrial estates on the edge of town. They're developing housing estates. So you've had this huge expansion of people moving in from the rural hinterlands into the city area. They haven't built the sewage systems. They have barely built the roads. They don't have any way really of dealing with all the problems. So you've got a farmer living next door to a factory that's brought in 1,000 laborers from across the country to work there. Well, you mix that ecological system, this urban-based and this rural-based one, all in the same place, and it stands to common sense that you could expect strange and unusual things to be happening ecologically. That was our hypothesis, and we took avian influenza because there was a good database on the number of chickens that were either died or were put down in the initial outbreaks. But we could have looked at dengue. We could have looked at other diseases as well if there was data on the outbreak.
The same theory would apply?
Same theory. It's a theory
So
we were
interesting.
looking at.
So let me get it right. While you move that wire in the middle, so it doesn't, it's what's happening is it's rolling in your arm. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
That's good. That's your arm outside. That's it. That's it. We got it now. That was my theory, and we have some.
You're better than me.
So if I have two rural areas dialoguing with each other, you know, contacting each other, that's not going to do it.
That probably won't do it.
And if I have two city areas interacting with each other, that's not going to do it. It's the diagonal where the city interacts with the country, with the rural, that's going to do it.
It's when the city moves, we call it suburbs, but these are not planned, organized, well-managed suburbs. In our dialogue, we call it peri-urban. It's the smash up of the rural right next to the urban, and it's got both rural features. You still got farmers living in these places, and urban features, factories and factory workers, all living in the exact same place.
Yeah.
And you got farmers with chickens running around their backyard, and you got another farmer with maybe 1,000 cooped up in a very fancy, modernized system.
Why?
Well, with running around the backyard, it can spread, and it can intensify if it happened to make it into that 1,000.
Is it because the cities are vulnerable somehow? City folk, city life, city ecology is vulnerable? Or is it because maybe the city offers a kind of arbor plate for it to grow.
Well, again, it's not the city per se or the rural per se, it's a place in
Combination.
between.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I interrupted you. Sumeet, what?
Yeah, in
where-
addition to what Jeff said, there's no true understanding of why the broader influenza A viruses have been emanating only from southern China or Vietnam. But on the landscape level, they do hypothesize that it's the very unique type of agricultural systems there, the paddy systems, the intensive paddying, and on the other hand, it's also some natural phenomena like certain wild birds there. Flyways happen to be in that region. So it was a kind of like a historical accident that maybe some wild birds in Siberia caught it and then they were flying through China and there was this ecosystem there just waiting for that problem to occur.
So
But,
there's a virus
yeah,
out there,
Right.
and it happens to be, exists in areas around and in this
Yeah.
area, and that virus is what mutates
Right.
by virtue of whatever the cross-pollination process is.
Exactly.
It mutates into something we don't want.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, even before the bird flu, there was a virus, a form of virus which scientists call the low pathogenic avian influenza, LPAI. That had never been a problem, even in wild birds or even in poultry. And veterinarians were discovering it all the time, and it would just, reveal itself as very minor symptoms in birds. And then this historical accident happened that the LPAI got converted or transformed into the highly pathogenic type, maybe because of bird migration coupled with these agricultural systems in
Yeah.
that part of the world. So
And that presents-
that was the trigger.
And that presents as a disease among birds,
Yeah.
and they get sick and they die.
Oh yeah, almost instantaneously.
Really?
Yeah, within like 24 hours, and that's what's worrying farmers all over the world because if one bird catches it within a day they die, and then it spreads to the next bird in the cage.
And the farmer has no choice but to observe this. He sees this.
Exactly.
And he knows, I mean, if he lives in an area where this kind of thing happens, he knows right away that we have bird flu that is killing birds immediately.
Right.
And then he reports that presumably to the authorities. But does he kill the rest of his birds? Does he
See, that's the
know
problem.
he doesn't kill the rest of his birds?
If you're a small farmer just on the edge of survival, do you kill all your?
No.
Your
No,
eggs.
You need to eat. Yeah, that's the interesting part. Okay, we're going to take a break now. And then that was a shockaroo, that last part. Then we talk about what kind of data you get and what you do with it and why it's meaningful in the global sense.
Okay.
Okay, that's Sumeet Saksena and Jeff Fox at the EastWest Center studying bird flu in Vietnam. We'll be right back.
Aloha, I'm Kirsten Baumgart-Turner, and I host Sustainable Hawaii every Tuesday from 11 a.m. to 12 noon. My guests offer insights on challenging economic and environmental issues facing our state and offer innovative solutions to increasing Hawaii's long-term sustainability. Recently, we've been focusing on sustainable land development, food, and energy security. If you have a project or issue you'd like to discuss on the show or would like to be a guest, please contact me at kirstenbturner@gmail.com. And tune in live weekly or view the show at your convenience at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Sumeet Saksena and Jeff Fox of the EastWest Center. We haven't had research from the EastWest Center in a while, so this is great. We're so happy that you're here, you guys. We want to squeeze every bit of knowledge out of you. Well, a lot of it anyway.
Well, thank you for having us.
So we have found that bird flu comes to a commune, if you will, a town, a village in Vietnam, and the farmer may or may not kill the birds, but he knows very well what's going on. And now the job is to get the data from that community and do something with it. Can you tell me how that works?
Yeah, as Jeff said earlier, Vietnam is one of the very unique developing countries that has an excellent census system, both the population census, but also in our case, something called an agricultural census.
What is it?
Agricultural census. it's done in the US too, once in 10 years, I think. But Vietnam actually does it once in 5 years. And it's an extremely comprehensive survey. The questionnaire has dozens and dozens of questions on every aspect of agriculture. And we were lucky that because of our collaborators in Vietnam, we could access some of that unique data. And also we happened to come across data on the epidemic outbreaks itself. And we are one of the few groups in the world fortunate enough to have access to those kind of databases.
So the Vietnamese government is giving you
Vietnamese, yeah. It's the equivalent of the US Census Bureau, their counterpart.
Not everybody can get it, though.
Oh, no.
If I just picked up the phone. I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's not easy. I believe in the US, on the census, you can go to the website and till the census tract level, you can download tons of stuff.
but not
They're
in
moving in
Vietnam.
that direction, but not yet.
Yeah.
And certainly, in this kind of spatial geography work that we do, we need to, at least come down to the village level to understand the risk dynamics.
What is this? I'm learning something. Spatial geography. This is a new one. What is that?
Spatial geography, you know GPS, of course,
Sure.
and you know the maps in your car.
Yes.
That's spatial geography.
Okay.
So geographic information system is a computerized map where you put all your data is in, and it's in little cells called pixels, and you can analyze all your data. Well, there's two ways of organizing this. Is more than you want to know. But you can analyze, slope and elevation and distance from town, and if you've got this census data, percent of the land within a administrative unit that's in rice, and that's in how many chickens there might be in that unit, and
great
how many are
information,
small farmers
yeah.
and how many big farmers,
Yeah.
and you can do a regression equation where all that becomes your independent variable, and number of chickens that died in that unit is what you're predicting as
This
your
is
dependent
so
unit.
much better than walking around with a clipboard. Yeah.
It is. It's just totally changed the way in which we do a lot of science
Yeah.
because we can spatialize it
Yeah.
now.
Okay, so you talked before the show began, Jeff, about communes. My first reaction was, man, that sounds like something communist, but back in the early part of the 20th century. But what is a commune, and how does that fit into this process of gathering information?
Well, the smallest administrative unit at which data is collected is called a commune in Vietnam. It does come out of the communist heritage. I think a county in the U.S. is somewhat equivalent, but a U.S. county would be geographically bigger, but it might have about the same population, roughly 10,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So we can tie all our census data to the commune, and then we can get other physical features of the landscape, soil, water, roads, etc., and put them within that same commune.
So you said that it was every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that suggests, that your data, whatever data you get, is going to be fairly current. But it also suggests that you can get a dynamic track on how things are changing.
Right.
So how many 5-year intervals do you want to look at when you make your research?
Well, the dream of every scientist is as many as possible, but
That's true.
one cannot afford that. But at the moment, at the EastWest Center, thanks again to our excellent collaborators, we have 2001, 2006, and 2011 data, which is fairly comprehensive. And as I said, we are probably one of the few groups in the world to have data for 3 periods of time. And we have been looking at how things have changed census to census.
So you don't have to go to Vietnam to do that. You have to go to Vietnam to make sure you have good relationships. It's all about Guan Chi, right? And good relationship, you can get the data, but in terms of doing the research, once you get the data, you can sit right there on East-West Road and do your examination of the data, right?
Well, let me speak a little bit about our collaborators. We work with what's now called Vietnam National University of Agriculture. When we started working, they were the Hanoi University of Agriculture. And we've, through the EastWest Center, because we've been in existence for 50 years, have been working in Hanoi since it opened up in the late 1980s. So we've had a 20-year relationship with this university. The rector was still a PhD student when I started working with him.
Great.
And so he gives us, through him and a small NGO which is run by the university gives us great access. And we funded our National Science Foundation grant funded 2 Vietnamese students to come here. They crunched all the numbers. One of them just went home with the completion of his PhD. This is what the EastWest Center is really about, promoting dialogue between
Sure.
U.S. and
Perfect
Asia
opportunity to
via
do
something
that.
like research.
Yeah.
So this is what the U.S. government's getting out of this.
And the
Yeah.
government of Vietnam is delighted with this because they can solve what is a problem in their country and a risk in their country. They don't want an outbreak. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and they want their people trained to be able to do the newest kind of geospatial analysis.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a vision. My vision is a spreadsheet, a huge, big spreadsheet with all the numbers and lots of fields to the right and to the bottom,
Right.
on both axes. And,
Exactly right.
You are presented with this huge spreadsheet, probably in Microsoft, yeah.
Exactly.
And now you have to make some sense of it. I also figure that the guys in Vietnam are trying real hard to make sense of it when they
Right.
collect it, yeah? And you're going to get the benefit of their thinking. But now it's here. Maybe you have some students from Vietnam, but you're on East-West Road, and you're trying to make sense of all this huge data. What's that like? How do you do that? I guess, another guess, come up with a hypothesis about something, anything, and then run a sort of test through the data and see if that turns out to be true. Tell me how you do it.
Well, first of all, you're spot on. We have essentially this massive spreadsheet, and the rows are about 10,000 rows, which correspond to 10,000 communes and municipal wards, or 10,000 villages and municipal wards in Vietnam.
So 10,000 times 10,000.
No, and no, not exactly. Not as much as 10,000, but the columns are almost more than 300.
Okay.
Because that is information from the census, and a lot of it are variables that we hypothesize may have some relevance to the spread of bird flu. So stepping back a little, yes, for the last few months or last year, we have been doing nothing but staring at our computer screens, these big spreadsheets and our statistical software packages. But this does not mean that the project did not require us to have a better idea of the field conditions. We had to make like umpteen trips to Vietnam, first of all, to sit down with the census authorities and explain to them that which data we want and in what format and so on. But that's the minor part. I think
You mean they adapt their gathering of information to what you want?
No. They have the data. It's just you
It's
have
just a
to tell them
format
format.
question.
Yeah,
Okay,
format
okay.
and how you want them to add up stuff, how you want them to multiply stuff and
Okay.
stuff. We call it aggregation or disaggregation of data. But I think that's the minor aspect. The more fundamental aspect is that when we think that certain phenomena might influence bird flu outbreaks, we have to actually go into the field, into the farms, into the paddy lands to get a sense of, is this all nonsense or are we on to something?
Yeah.
So in
That's
fact,
exciting.
I think
Come up with the hypothesis. It's an aha moment, yeah? I mean, to have it validated, yeah?
because our work we think of as being bundled up by 2 of our publications, and the unique aspect of these 2 publications is we did a lot of field work. We also not just ecological observations, but then Jeff also led a lot of focus group discussions with the villagers
In Vietnam, with the
in
people,
Vietnam,
in English.
in almost 50 villages.
In Vietnamese, but I don't speak Vietnamese, in translation.
So we asked them, what are your perceptions? And so from all that, then we come back to our models and say, okay, finally, this is the short list of variables, and we think what we observed in the field is not too out of worldish. So let's try.
Yeah. So it's iterative.
Yeah, exactly.
But let me go back to your hypothesis, because you're right. It was hypothesis driven. The original hypothesis that putting urban and rural next together can upset the environment or the ecosystem, that was the original one. But the other thing, just to say a little bit how research is done, it's you look at the literature and what have other people done, and there's been a lot of written about how places change as they urbanize, and they delineate a number of characteristics that a larger portion of the household's income comes from off-farm sources. that most of the farmers are older and that younger people are migrating elsewhere, that women play a larger role in the decision making and in the income making. So, you know, you
The
have
whole
to.
enchilada, everything.
Yeah, you have to go look at all that and you're making new hypotheses there. Which one of these do I include or not include in the analysis?
When you go on the field trips, how do you pick where you go? I mean, you want lush, you want lots of data, you want interesting data, you want people who are who are involved in the data who can provide it to you. So you sit with a map and a little stickers. What?
No, let me. Sumeet mentioned that we basically had 2 papers come out of this. As researchers, that's our product. The first paper was actually our attempt to map all of Vietnam, all 10,000 communes, as having rural characteristics, urban core characteristics, sort of urban characteristics, and peri-urban. We had to be able to identify the areas that are going under rapid change. And we, normally that's done using remote sensing data, but that doesn't tell you anything about the characteristics of the people that live in these different areas. Using census data, we could do something different. And we were successful. We mapped all 10,000 communes as one of those 4 categories, and we could then point out, oh, these are the 1,000 communes, I forget how many, 700, 800, that are rapidly changing. So then,
3,000.
You want the ones that are changing.
Well, so when we did our field work, we then sampled. We want some rural ones, we want some urban ones, and we want primarily these rapidly changing ones. So that's how we did it. And then, you've got 10,000 communes, it's all on the computer. You allow the computer to go in and randomly select the places that you're doing.
Oh, okay.
So that it's random.
So it's scientific that way.
So it's scientific. Yeah. We can put a little on it so that we're not running all over the country. We can lump them in places so that we can drive to them within a reasonable period of time. But yeah, we did 50
communes.
50 communes. We went and visited, and it was a lot of fun.
It sounds great. You get to know the country that way for sure in every particular. But one thing you said I want to pick up on, and that is you could have used sensor data instead of sense us data. My reaction to that is that if you're looking for a large-scale conclusion, if you're looking to predict, if you're looking to learn global truths, or at least regional truths, census data would be more valuable than sensor data.
I think you said remote.
Well, I'm saying remote means satellite imagery.
Okay.
Yeah, and you actually need both. I mean, from the sensor data, from the remote sensing imagery, then we can look at a satellite image taken in 1990, and one in 95, and one in 2000.
So you can do both. Are you doing both?
We are doing both. This is primarily based on the census data, but one of the characteristics that we use in the final model is actually a satellite-driven variable.
This is high science now.
Yeah.
I mean, literally.
Literally.
So one more question. Actually, let's take a break and come back. And when we come back, I'd like to ask you about the literature. That if I want to get into this, if I want to get your jobs, okay, what do I have to read? And what are you writing? And where have you published?
Okay.
We come back so that the guys out there, the young students, they will know more about where the literature is. Okay, that's Sumeet Saksena and Jeff Fox of the EastWest Center doing research on bird flu in Vietnam. We're going to find out about the literature, and then we're going to find out the predictions. Whoa.
Oh, wow.
Don't have lunch yet.
Aloha, my name is Justine Espiritu, and I co-host Hawaii Farmers Series with Matthew Johnson of Oahu Fresh. We talk about Hawaii's local farmers and their supporters. In order to have a vibrant and sustainable local food system, farmers are always the foundation, but there's so many other people involved in the community that help support those farmers. So we bring those folks onto our show every Thursday at 4 p.m. We get their backstory, their history, find out a little more about them, and we find out why they love what they do and their perspective and their advice on how we can continue to have a dynamic and vibrant and sustainable local food system. So we broadcast live every Thursday at 4 p.m. And you can also catch us on ThinkTech's YouTube channel as well as Alelo 54. So we hope you tune in and join us. Thank you.
Okay, we're back, we're live, we're alive today. It's a great discussion. This is terrific, you guys, really appreciate
Thank you.
this. Okay, that's Sumeet Saksena on my far left, and Jeff Fox immediately to my left from the EastWest Center, talking about research on bird flu, incidences of bird flu in Vietnam, and trying to figure out exactly what's going on a kind of bird demographic level, community demographics, really exciting. So my question is the literature, so that they can get your jobs.
Now, let me say a bit about our project first. The way in which science is being done is changing. What National Science Foundation is funding is changing. And one of the ways it's changing is that we're increasingly trying. You often hear academia described as silos. You have geographers, you have anthropologists, you have your oceanographers, and they don't talk to each other. But that's not how the world works. It needs to be integrated. Your social scientist needs to work with your biophysical scientist together. So that's what this is. It's transdisciplinary. When you go transdisciplinary, then that means you've got all those literatures. You've got the geographer's literature, the agronomist literature, and you have the statistician's literature. I can't read his statistical literature and make sense of it. He can probably read my geographical land use land cover change literature and make sense of it. But yeah, that's what it is. It's really a dialogue, and it's very challenging. And then when we get to publication, we get challenges too, because traditionally the publication outlets have been set up along disciplines. And now we need to be able to cross those disciplines in publishing. And there are increasingly a number of outlets, scientific journals that publish transdisciplinary work.
Well, when I want to do research, I mean, I know it sounds simplistic. I go on Google, I type a few words in, and we sort of depend on Google for that. But what about in science? If I want to find out all the prior art, so to speak, the prior science on bird flu, what everybody's been doing everywhere, how do I find that? Do I just go into Google? Do you guys use Google?
We use Google, and you may not know, but there's Google Scholar, which
Ooh.
takes you into the
You heard
academic
it here.
literature. Type in scholar.google.com, and there you are. Well, to use it effectively, you need to be tied into the University Library, Hamilton, because it'll tell you there's a journal article, and they'll give you the abstract. But if you actually want to read that thing for free, then you need to be able to access a library. And so
That's fabulous.
Hamilton does it. Hamilton has an excellent online collection.
Well, okay, so now we're talking about where you guys have published. Where do you find the articles in this area, and where have you published?
Well, traditionally, most of the articles on bird flu, at least, are still in the veterinary science journals. But I would say over the last decade or so, a few multidisciplinary journals have also come up, the most famous of them being EcoHealth and also PLOS One. So we published our main paper in PLOS One, which is an open access journal. And it's one of those few where you don't need to be a member of a library. You can just, as long as you have a fast internet connection, you can download the entire PDF, and you can also, more fascinatingly, you can be connected to the social media, because you can see what every other reader has commented about the article. You can see how many people liked the article or did not like the article and shared,
dislike,
tweet about it. So I don't understand any of that social media thing, but I can see that
Jeff
My kids can help him.
the youngsters, the moment they read an open access article, then it's all being tweeted and Facebook to no end.
That's valuable, isn't it? To
Yeah,
find
I
out what
guess
there's the commentary from the crowd. Yeah.
In fact, I heard now that there are, in fact, a few journals, online journals, which not only do free publication, but they will also online provide the identity of the reviewers and the reviewers' comments. So it's like a different level of transparency. I'm not sure whether it's a good thing or not, but there are journals which will tell you what the reviewers felt about you and how you changed your article based.
And it's not a handle thing where people make irresponsible remarks. You know, in the press they have that, in a newspaper. You make a handle and you say anything you want, and it's usually inappropriate. But in the scholarship world, the world of scholar, when you make a comment on these articles, you have to identify yourself.
Oh yeah, I guess, and there must be some caretaker there who makes sure that irrelevant and abusive stuff is taken out, I guess.
Yeah, sure. You have to moderate it, sure, especially because people get in there and make outrageous statements. You don't want to take that seriously.
Well, this is a whole new world for scholarly publication, so where it will go, I don't think we know yet. But
Yeah, it's very interesting how it catches up.
Yeah,
You know, all
right.
the social media catches up with
Yeah,
everything,
yeah,
including you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the journals I should look at for your kind of research?
Yeah, I would say PLOS One. There's a whole series of subtitles under PLOS pathogens and so on, PLOS biology. That's, I would say, for youngsters, the number one place to begin with. But as Jeff said, and as actually you said, I'm not shy at all of going into Google, not even Scholar, just the plain old Google and putting in my keywords. And sometimes it will itself take you to Google Scholar, but sometimes more fascinatingly, it will take you to reports that have not yet been published. You know, sometimes ministries, they commission reports, and the consultant doesn't care about publishing it, but the report contains really valuable stuff.
Yeah.
So I would just tell youngsters that, you know, go for Google, just don't.
Well, you have to know what's going on, especially when you're talking about multiple countries where this could pop up in any form. You know, it could be a news story, you know, about an outbreak of some kind, where the scholarly journals haven't found it yet. I mean, they're not going to be that immediate, and you need to know it anyway. Yeah.
In fact, a bit of history prior to this project actually beginning, and I think Jeff would know better. One of our colleagues was actually tapped into this thing that they were using social media to get outbreaks data. Jim, and that was our first beginning into this thing. That before we got the official statistics on outbreak, a colleague had found that there was someone else in the social media world who had collected medical data just based on what's being reported in social media.
Truth is that social media and the internet is available everywhere, including for farmers in Vietnam.
It is true. They certainly all have cell phones, but they're plugged in. They really are. And I agree. I think that social media, again, is going to, well, you opened up with global warming. Well, the disasters that come with them, be it hurricane, tsunami, whatever, social media is just going to totally change the way in which we can deal with that and identify who needs what where.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's not an outrageous statement to say that social media and we're changing in temperatures, air or sea temperatures is going to change the way poultry works.
No.
And the way these mutating viruses work. And who knows what follows.
Well, it certainly affects the market. They know where the best prices are.
Okay, well, I want to talk about, we have about 7 or 8 minutes left, and I want to talk about the whole thing about predictions. So I would like to know from you guys where the, what is it, H5N1 is going to pop up next. I would like to know where I have to be careful. And I means everybody. I would like to know how dangerous it'll be, where it'll be, how, I guess the serious, the lethality of the disease. And that's largely a biological question, but you guys, looking at it from your vantage, can actually figure out biology on a very global scale. So what do you do to find out enough, get enough data to predict where, this is a hard one, to predict where an outbreak might take place, and what kind of outbreak are we going to have there?
Yeah, our specific community, the people who are interested in things so specific as avian flu, we haven't reached the stage where we can actually provide a temporal forecast. We like a weather forecast, we can't tell you how many outbreaks there will be tomorrow or how many outbreaks there will be in the next season, and so on. I think the entire community has made progress on the spatial prediction that we have a better idea of which parts of the world this can pop up in, but we can't tell you when it will happen and at what frequency.
Can you tell me how fast an outbreak will work? In other words, you find, your data will show you, by however you get it, that in place X, there's an outbreak. But you know the characteristics of that place. And my question is, how fast is that going to move? How soon will that get to place Y? How many other communes, for example, would be involved, and how soon? Can you tell me that?
No, not even that as of now. The people have started modeling those kind of questions, but I don't think it has really reached mainstream science as yet, because the number of data and the number of variables that have to go into that kind of modeling is even more intensive than the kind of work that we have done. But for sure, for example, our work, now what it is essentially saying is that if governments in Asia have limited resources to keep an eye out on the problem, then they best allocate whatever little resources they have on the peri-urban areas, because we have provided ample evidence that that's where things pop up.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of, I don't know whether you can't call it forecasting, but it's a kind of prediction that these are the areas where...
Okay, let me take the flip side of it now. The flip side is, it's sort of like Ebola. The most interesting thing to me was not so much that Ebola, flowered out and killed all those people. It was like, a wave, huge 100-foot wave, and nobody could do anything about it. It's that it stopped. It stopped. How did that happen, that it stopped? And the same thing here. I ask you the flip side of the question. Can you predict how long the outbreak will last and when it will decline and return to normalcy? Can you do that?
That actually, again, goes beyond what we sought out to do. Our project set out to show that these places in rapid transition are dangerous. So and the other thing that happens is the initial wave, you get the outbreak where it's going to happen, and those chickens die, and that's recorded, and then that tells you something about where, hot spots of where it's going to occur. After that, the Vietnamese government steps in and starts giving inoculation to all the chickens across the country. And the farmers start becoming leery of reporting. So, but there's a whole lot of things that happen. So the future waves, you don't really know. It affects where it occurs spatially.
It's human conduct.
Yeah, it's human conduct's now interfered. So we can't really predict where it's going to go across the landscape based on our model. Mm-hmm. There are other work. Who's working?
Yeah, in fact,
Vietnam?
at different scales, sometimes people have developed models, and very often it's just a PhD student who's trying to build up fancy models. So like you show that commune X has outbreak and how soon will it reach Y. So then they put in things like how many trucks are there in the commune, how far do the trucks go, how often do the trucks go, how many traders are there between the two villages. That's at one level. Then there are other groups of people who look at, okay, if in Vietnam there's an outbreak, then how many flights are out of Vietnam every day, how many passengers out of Vietnam going to which destinations. If one of them carries the virus with them on their body, first of all, what is the likelihood the virus will survive that 20-hour flight to US? So these kind of models go on, but they are still in very infant stage of development compared to the spatial models and the risk map models that most of colleagues around the world have done. So we have a better idea of spatial distribution, but this time-wise transmission is far less.
So where is your modeling going to go? I mean, when you guys take it to wherever you want to take it, what is it going to be like?
Yeah, for sure. Specifically, this for the first time that we have been able to show that peri-urban areas. First of all, we have shown how do you identify a peri-urban area, and then we have shown that those are the places which have, let's say, higher chicken densities. They have higher flock size, diversity, and so on. So I think as scientists, the first thing we would like to do is to show that it works. This modeling approach works in other countries and other regions of the world. But I'm also equally interested in showing that it might also work for other diseases, not just avian influenza. This is
So
not.
if I gave you a million billion, a special think tech grant. Where's
We'll
the
take it.
checkbook? Would you focus on taking your model to other diseases, other pathogens? Would you take it to improving it for bird flu, or would you take it to other countries, other areas? I mean, where is the next development here? If I gave you a lot of money, what would you do with it?
A lot of money, we would do all of that. I mean, yes, we would like to model other diseases, see if this is still relevant there. Delhi has had a huge dengue outbreak this year. Very, very relevant. That would be something we could see if this model or this approach works. But within Vietnam, avian influenza has not gone away. Taking it down lower. I mean, FAO's had some success in following duck flocks across the Mekong Delta. It's where the ducks, you cut the rice and you have a dry field. Well, that's where they take the ducks. So you map rice harvesting because that's where the ducks go, and perhaps you have a higher correlation with outbreaks of avian influenza. That next level of research could be done. So both would be interesting things to follow up on.
What a great life to do this kind of research, understanding our world right down to the smallest element of it and also the largest. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show.
It's great to be here.
Thank
Thanks a
you
lot.
very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You have to do this again, check up
Oh, yeah.
on you guys.
All right.
After.
Thanks very much.
All right.